Hey, Lisa, thank you so much for joining our podcast. I really appreciate your time coming in on here, explaining to us your thoughts on Bitcoin. I want to start off quickly with just a quick overview of what got you here to the point that you are currently with Bitcoin. Maybe a little bit about your career, what kind of experience you have.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you, Rajat, for having me. Thank you for reaching out on social media, wherever it was. I really always enjoy that. And so it's great to be here. Uh, let's see, career. Well, I randomly answered an ad in the Houston Chronicle when I graduated from college. That was like back in the day when you're circling, you're getting the job section and you're circling the jobs and you're actually taking the big envelopes and you're printing your resume and you're typing up a cover letter. It was back in those days. And I ended up getting a job. I think there were like 500 people that applied for 2 jobs. For this particular job, I applied for a ton. I actually got offered a job as the store manager at a Taco Bell. So that was one consideration. The other was, and by the way, I have a science degree. So that was a little bit like, huh. But I answered an ad for Solomon Brothers. They had a trading desk in Houston. It's called Fibro Energy. They were just a bunch of badasses. They were an awesome group. And I landed on their heavy fuels desk as an analyst. So it was my job
Huh.
to process trades and prepare reports and that kind of stuff. And I realized really quickly that the guys that were sitting next to me made, orders of magnitude more money. And they really were very smart, but they weren't, but, they really weren't any smarter than I was. I think that, we learn all good things. We're not born brilliant. It really depends on our initiative and our curiosity. So anyway, being greedy, I said, I really want to trade. I want to set my sights on how I might build a career doing that. So I left Fibro. I got a job offer from Enron. They recruited me and I went over to Enron. And again, I was in an analyst position and learned pretty quickly that I was never going to trade there because I didn't have an MBA. And they were very particular about their criteria for traders. So, but I was there, I think I was probably there a year or 2 years, way before it imploded. And I had the opportunity to work on what I think was the coolest desk, which was the Gas Daily derivatives desk. It was a brand new derivatives product that honed in on pipeline specific risk on an intra-month basis. So you could trade, say, 6 months out, you'd trade the index, let's say plus a penny, minus a penny, whatever the market was. But it also allowed you the ability to trade the balance of your current month. So today's, mid-November. So let's say I could trade, today's the 8th, I could trade 9 through 30. That really was an enabler of, a more accurate representation of the risk that a desk might be taking. And so that desk served all other desks or a lot of the other desks at Enron. It really informed a lot of the other desks. And the guy that actually created it, Jim Minetti, he was one of the best brokers in the natural gas world. He lives here. I still see him. He's kind of loosely in the Bitcoin space, kind of Bitcoin adjacent. But anyway, so I went on to a production company and I traded physical gas and then left there and was recruited actually by a former boss to go to PG&E National Energy Group, which was the spec trading group that was entirely separate balance sheet from the utility that's based in California. But so I led East Coast trading at PG&E, which meant all physical and financial. I could trade futures. I could trade other commodities. I traded a little bit of crude oil, not a ton, but participated in some other markets. But I also sat on our executive hedge team, which has really enabled me to have insight into the things that I really love to focus on today in Bitcoin, which is how do we monetize every molecule within existing energy infrastructure, right? We talk a lot about on-grid and Riot's building these magnificent facilities. And then we hear a lot about flared gas, and that seems pretty obvious, but there's a ton of potential to go in and monetize existing assets. And it really, what my work today is working with those companies, but also private equity groups that control or have influence over energy asset companies. And I have a partner, Dan Morrison. We will basically just go in and give them a use case for Bitcoin mining. And so um, if it's a gas processing plant, here's how you can utilize excess molecules. They can't really sell power, but they can sell access.
Instead of literally burning it as flare gas, you can use it to mine Bitcoin. You can create Bitcoin with it.
Can use it to mine Bitcoin. And you've
Yeah.
already, in the case of a lot of these midstream assets, they've already, to use big words, like they've coordinated all this capital, right? They've built all these buildings. They've gone into the capital markets. They've borrowed money. They've issued equity. And so it's like, why are you not monetizing fully
Yeah.
your capital investment? And so that's what we're working on. And it's, I selfishly am able to bring the message of Bitcoin to a larger community, because these are folks that I won't say have paid attention to the mainstream media, but they certainly haven't paid attention to Bitcoin Twitter. They're not
Yeah.
absorbed into the Bitcoin Twitter world. And so, much of this is just brand new, and they're thrilled to, kind of see things in a new way.
Yeah, I want to ask you a couple questions. So there was something that you said there, where you grow with your abilities. You're not born with your abilities. You develop them over time. Have you read the book Mindset by any chance?
No, is it good?
It's really good. I would highly recommend it. Mindset. It basically talks about fixed versus growth mindset, and I think that would work perfectly for you. You probably already are applying a lot of the principles from it, just based on what you were saying. But I would even say for my audience, check out that book. Great book. Something else that I wanted to say. I think there was a term that you phrased, molecular. Was it molecular monetization or something like that?
Oh, you could say it that way. I say monetizing every molecule.
Oh, there you go. Okay, can you explain that a little bit? I think that's actually the way that you explained it on I think it was a couple posts maybe. I thought it was really interesting. Can you explain that for my audience?
Okay, so let's do a use case. Let's say that I am a power generator. I have natural gas plants, or I have some sort of combined cycle plants, right? I have all this huge infrastructure, and I make power so that when I hit that magic switch right there, the electricity fairies bring me my power so I can flip on my espresso machine, which I just told you I blew the circuit in my kitchen today making myself lunch because I had my air fryer cooking bacon and I was poaching eggs in the microwave. And yeah, anyway, but the magicians that make this possible, it part of the process is these generation assets. And so the generators bid power into the market. And I live in Texas, so they are selling power, but they are basically setting a price, and they're saying, for this price we will put our power onto ERCOT, so that ERCOT can then balance the load, and the load can be sold to, all the way down basically to the retail level, and then the magic will happen in our houses. Okay, but a non-0% of the time, that generator will have to bid less than zero, or if not less than zero, less than it actually cost them to make. Right. So in essence, it's not it's not an economic decision. It's an operational decision, because
Yeah.
their alternative would be shutting down, ramping down generation to match the demand at the price that they would like to achieve. So enter Bitcoin mining, right? The generator can now mine Bitcoin themselves, but let's just say, they want to kind of do a JV and get it off the ground and see how this all works. And this is actually already happening in Texas. Not, I don't know of specific generation assets, but I know gas processing plants, this is happening. The Bitcoin miner can come in and they act as a load center, and they set the floor for the price that the generation asset can sell power for, right? Like it's a pre-agreed term. And then there's also a lot of optionality, which I think most people are not yet pricing into markets, because it now takes a generator that produced one commodity and it actually gives the generator the ability to produce two commodities,
Oh, wow.
right?
Yeah,
So
that's
if they
crazy.
were to mine Bitcoin on their own, they're not only making power, right? Because you can trade the
Yeah.
electricity markets. So they're not only able to sell into the grid, or depending on the trading organization, they may actually trade around their assets. Have spec desks like what I worked on. So this now doubles your commodity profile. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of value to that, because for the first time ever, you can, in many energy um, assets, you can economically dispatch energy. And so, like, I'll give you another example. Um, so my colleague Dan Morrison has a Bitcoin mine that is out in New Mexico. He bought 54 gas wells and a gathering system. The gas that is being produced, that he has access to, actually goes into a pipeline known as Waha. The market is Waha. 47% of the time over the last 12 months, Waha has traded below zero.
Wow.
So because you don't want to sell into a negative market, right, you curtail what goes into the pipeline. Again, enter Bitcoin. Dan could have set up a JV with a Bitcoin miner to come in. He could have established a floor price for his natural gas. And then, however you're going to structure the deal, there are many ways. He could have partnered with a Bitcoin miner, but he decided that he would do it himself. So he set up generators, micro data centers, has obviously his ASICs, and is running a Bitcoin mine off of his natural gas. And for him, it's really, if I take the natural gas and I turn it into Bitcoin, like, what is my realized price for the natural gas, right? He can now look at those two things and compare which is more economically, where does he have more economic interest?
Yeah.
Should he be doing this, or should he be doing this? And that's why I think more and more energy companies are beginning to really open their eyes to the possibility that this is not only operationally beneficial, like we talked about in the generation profile, but it's accretive, right? It hits your balance sheet in just the right way. And
Yeah.
again, not to overemphasize this, but I wish more people were talking about it. The ability to have two commodities to work with versus one is huge.
It's like a brand new business plan,
Yeah.
right? It just gives you a new set of revenue that you probably would never have gotten before. I actually have a question for you. I don't know if you'd be able to answer this, but why would the cost of gas go to negative?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Huge oversupply.
Wow.
That
Okay.
that market out there, it just a ton of new supply. They're drilling oil like crazy. There's a lot of gas that comes up with some of the oil. It's there. It's just that kind of part of the country. There's a huge amount of gas, and there's very little ways to bring it to market. And so the pipelines that are there, actually, I think they're just opening a new pipeline, but and I believe that it's already full. So you have just nowhere to go with
Hmm.
gas, right?
And plus, there's a cost of moving it around. There's the cost of holding it if you want to. Can you hold it in like barrels? Can these producers
Yeah.
just hold on to it? I mean, I guess that takes up a lot of space, so maybe that's not worth it. But
Yeah, no, you can't. I mean, yes, there are ways to store natural gas, but like typically it's done at pretty gigantic scale. When I was at
Yeah.
PG&E, we had salt dome storage in the Gulf Coast that was around 3 trillion cubic feet of gas. And so again, like when you have gas, when you have assets around any commodity, that gives you a lot of value when you are making decisions. Um, how will I move gas? How do I eke the most money out of the assets that I've already got a sunk cost in? And so, that arbitrage is really, to me, was probably the most fun part of trading gas. I mean, when you're trading gas, you're sort of two things. You're I think I've already said this, but you're like a weatherman, because the first thing that you do is you wake up and you check. In my day, it was like the Weather Channel. And then actually we got a service where we would get like email bulletins through the service, but it was literally the first thing that you did, because any change in a forecast, even 1 degree either direction, would change the demand profile for
Yeah.
energy. So commodity traders are information gatherers at heart and risk managers,
Yeah.
and really risk absorbers, right? Like you need spec trading desks, and you need growth in the market so that they're basically um, taking risk off of other people. So taking risk from the miners, helping the miners de-risk in the energy space, helping the producers de-risk, right? It's really thrilling for me to see all of these new products um, that I think will eventually come to market and help our space grow much beyond the players that we would normally think of, right? Much beyond the miners, much beyond. It will let the big financial players come in, and who knows who it incentivizes to come into Bitcoin. But it's
Yeah.
to me, it's sort of like I've already seen this movie, and it's really cool, and I can't wait for it to happen again.
Yeah, I think I think the next 10 years are going to be just insane. They're going to be extreme. I think they're going to be fun for the people who are part of it, and the people who aren't part of it, I think they're going to be pretty bad because I don't know. I've actually done a pretty. I tried to do a deep dive on how real estate works, and I feel like real estate can't survive as an asset on a Bitcoin standard. But I don't want to go into that tangent. I've done tons of videos on that. Maybe we can talk about that later. But I wanted to ask you, um, just as somebody who's worked in energy for so long, somebody who has the experience with seeing negative energy prices, do you believe that Bitcoin uses too much energy?
It doesn't use nearly enough energy, right? I think that's like saying, do we think we have, um, do we have enough, guys, military people, when we go off to war? Do we have enough soldiers? Right? We need to have more. I mean, okay, I can really go down the rabbit hole on this.
Do it, do it. I would love that. I think that would be really interesting because I don't personally have an energy background. I don't have an energy. I don't have a background learning about this. So yeah, do it. I would really appreciate that.
So no, it doesn't use too much energy, right? In every person, every miner, every node that comes onto the network strengthens the network. Okay, that seems really pretty obvious. My big push has been talking about the national security angle of having onshore energy and onshore hash rate in Bitcoin. So I'm sorry, I'm going to offend climate people, but it's really scary to me that the climate zealots get as much attention as they do, and the public gets so wrapped up in the climate argument. I almost feel like we're children, like we're 4-year olds having this argument over really inherently something we probably all are on the same side of. We all want clean water and clean air. And yet, the folks who present the anti carbon, anti energy, in my experience, they're not engineers, they're not former military, they're not in the energy world. They probably couldn't tell you the first thing about how the magic happens when you flip the switch on the wall. We need onshore energy production. It is a key facet of our national security. And beyond that, I mean, just more simplistically, it is what makes everything possible for us within our borders. The more energy we have, the more economic strength that we have, because we can build companies that launch rockets into space. And then when the rocket comes down, it gets caught by the arms of at the facility. We can have an innovation in every field, but we must have energy. And when we don't have onshore energy, we put ourselves at risk, which is really what Europe felt immediately when Russia launched into Ukraine. All of the discussion in Europe that was taking place was not all, much of the discussion was their energy security. And this is a problem that they've faced for a long time. I shared some remarks at the Swan event in LA a couple of weeks ago. And one of the examples that I included was when there was a pipeline that was being constructed in the early 80s. It's known as the Trans-Siberian Pipeline. It's 2,600 miles long, went from Russia into Europe. It was a lifeline to much needed energy. We were in the midst of the Cold War. Reagan and his folks went to our allies in Germany and France and said, don't support in any way the construction of this pipeline. Because if we do, and Russia, if the Soviet Union can monetize their natural resource, right? If they can make a good and sell it to the world, then we're going to keep their ability to buy weapons, and this will perpetuate the war. And so the US's goal was to basically make Russia poor, right? Not be able to monetize their energy, in hopes that that would extinguish the Cold War. Okay. And then I would encourage people to Google, it's called the Farewell Dossier. It's referred to, Google the Farewell Dossier. But the CIA has put information out to say that we, with a covert officer, implanted basically malware into the gas processing, pressure sensors, the technology that controls the pressure in the pipeline. And the CIA claims that they caused this huge explosion and et cetera, in order to, halt this pipeline. And the reason I'm sort of framing it like this is because it's really thought to be like, well, was it really? The military has reported that it happened, but then we have view from space where some people say that the pictures were false and others say, no, it really happened. And regardless, our allies in Europe who we went to and said, please don't do anything to help Russia, France, Germany, Italy, they all said, go pound sand. Our energy security is more important than your political will. And so I think we need to be very careful as we consider when we make global statements and when we try to exert power globally. We saw hints of it in the 80s when our allies, they didn't turn against us, but they did not follow the directive of the US government. And I think the stakes are even much higher today. We've seen what happened as a result of our sanctions towards Russia when they went into Ukraine, right? we immediately sanctioned them and issued the do not buy Russian natural resource order. They couldn't sell natural resources into the dollarized world. They ended up going around us and selling it to other countries that are energy poor. This is really critical because I think what it also demonstrated to Russia was not only do they need to strengthen alliances in other parts of the world, but because they're the second largest producer of natural gas in the world, it really was not I was trying to think of how to say this to be funny, but they increased their Bitcoin mining efforts. And they've announced that in 2023 that, they claim they mined 1 out of every 5 Bitcoin.
Wow.
Right? Like that to me is, again, if you talk about optionality in the commodities market, you've now created at a national level optionality for your own natural resource. Russia, for the first time ever, has the ability to monetize every molecule, no matter what any other government says.
So now essentially they have an option to sell energy for something other than US dollars.
Well, they use their natural gas to mine Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and then they can trade Bitcoin for anything else, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty on record with saying this, that I think in the next year we see Russia begin to accept Bitcoin and possibly demand Bitcoin for natural resources, because I guess this week there's been some discussion among some of the BRICS countries on how they could possibly set up a system of trade. And they're literally talking about going back to bartering.
Wow. I think I saw that they were saying tangerines or something,
And
from
wheat.
tangerines from
I
something
mean,
like that. Yeah.
in what world are we actually going to go backwards?
No, we're not.
No, we're not. And they've also announced, Russia has also announced that they've now got a sovereign fund. Perhaps I'm not using quite the right words, but they're dedicating a huge amount of money in order to have an infrastructure. They've set an infrastructure goal for themselves around Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So I think it's a really pivotal moment globally for everyone to take a step back and and I mean this very seriously, take a very deep breath and consider our energy security. I think it should be our number one priority. Obviously, everyone's excited about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Great, me too. I'd be more excited if the US government began to incentivize energy companies and incentivize everyone to create mining facilities. That's
Yeah.
what should be happening, right? They've incentivized, we could name lots of other things. Subsidies for ethanol, subsidies for wind and solar,
Corn.
subsidies for, right. That moment, if we do that in the US, that would be one of the pivotal moments in US history, if we began to subsidize or incentivize hash onshore. Because not only do I believe that it's the Bitcoin and the protocols, Nostr, et cetera, like these decentralized protocols will be the way that we go in the future, right? I think we're re-architecting the internet. And I would say that I'm way out of my depth on what that looks like, but I've been to 2 of the 3 Nostr conferences, and I've spent, collectively like 8 days listening to highly technical, skilled people talk about what they're building. And it's pretty magnificent. But we must have energy infrastructure on shore so that we can continue to participate in every aspect right? So that we can continue. If we don't have onshore, I mean, just like Bob, I'll credit Bob Burnett. If we don't have onshore hash rate, we don't then have onshore block space. And if we don't have block space, where shall the financial institutions, um, how shall they get access to that block space when everything is recorded on the blockchain, right? Like they're going to call Russia and say, like, will you take these transactions? Like, are we going to have alliances with our allies and say, will you process this batch of transactions for us? Like, this doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Yeah, I think it gives them independence, right? It gives them, like you said, with Russia. So with Russia, because of Bitcoin, they were able to find a new customer for their energy, I guess, right? Because they were able to sell their
Themselves.
energy to the Bitcoin network.
Well,
With No, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's just what Dan Morrison did, right? He, rather than put gas into Waha at a negative price, he mines Bitcoin and then he can keep it or he can sell it for whatever he wants, right? He could go to dollars and then go buy ribeye at Costco. Like, and it's the same thing at a nation state level. It's really why I think
Yeah.
every nation state should be looking at their energy profile. It's why I think Alaska will be huge for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network. Um, I'm looking at a project right now in Paraguay, you know, and that's uh, their government is not quite as excited as others, but I think that it's dawning on everyone that you must have this infrastructure within your borders. I think that we'll see it in, continue to see it in the energy rich countries. I think we'll see it in Qatar and, um, those nations that have huge energy profiles. And so,
I don't I don't see why these countries are expected to sell their energy, which they produce. They take time, they put in the resources to produce it, in exchange for pieces of paper. Like there's literally pieces of paper that can be printed. Do you think that that's going to be part of the reason for why the world is going to go to a Bitcoin standard? That's how I see it, at least. Maybe I'm wrong in my belief here,
no,
but I think that
I think you're 100% right. There's no reason anymore for any nation to sell anything
yeah,
for dollars.
yeah,
I mean, I'm sorry. There just isn't. You can sell whatever it is that you have, right? China can sell every unnecessary plastic object that fills my CVS that I end up buying. Um, they could, I mean, everyone can be, Mandrick sells baklava, or he used to. I think he gives it away now, but he was selling
oh yes,
baklava for Bitcoin, right? We all should take, in my opinion, and it sounds like you, right? If I'm going to convert my physical energy, my brain power, my brute force power, right? Like, why would I preserve it in a currency that's literally on fire?
yeah. Or even really anything that can be printed or created. More of it can be created, and you have no limit. So for example, actually this is a perfect segue, so we can see like from what I a lot of what I talk about is how real estate is going to go to zero in terms of Bitcoin, because people people today buy real estate because they can't save in dollars. They have to get rid of their dollars, and they have to buy something that they think is going to be scarce, it's going to be increasing in value or maintaining its value over the long term. And I think that uh, there's a lot of I personally think that the real estate market is a Ponzi scheme. I think that a lot of people they just buy houses because they think the price is going to go up. They don't care about the tenant. The tenant doesn't care about the landlord. It's becoming more and more uh inform it's becoming more and more transactional. It's becoming more and more formal. People don't care about each other. I think I think that's actually one of the things that Bitcoin fixes as well. So there's energy, where I've seen in Africa there are a lot of energy companies that are creating grids there because it's profitable. It's finally profitable to do so. So now everybody can get energy. So it fixes that. Then there's also the side of real estate. So I think there's so many things here that there's such a deep dive that people haven't done. Have you considered the real estate side of things by any chance?
Well, of course. And um, yeah, I've read a lot about that. Somebody that I know and follow on social media, Leon Wonkum, writes a lot about it. You know, I'm not quite sure that the real estate, I hear what you're saying and I agree.
Yeah.
From global view, I completely hear what you're saying and completely agree. But I think as more people own Bitcoin over a number of years and can create the ability for themselves to get back into houses and to build families and have children. And so I do think Bitcoin incentivizes that. I think Bitcoin incentivizes families,
Yeah. Oh,
incentivizes,
completely.
right.
Yeah, completely
I
agree.
think it takes a long time for that to sort of unwind because,
Yeah.
if the Federal Reserve continues to march rates to zero, like how do you get people off that train, right? And then rightly so, if they know that they can go out and borrow money at 3% and their asset increases by 5% a year, like I just don't know how long that trade takes to unwind. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's basically a carry trade,
I
right?
guess. Um,
Like you're giving you're borrowing a currency that's cheap, and then you're, I mean, in a way, I personally think that houses have become money in our current system, right?
well, always it's been how people have really grown wealth, right? They've bought a
Yeah.
house and over time it's appreciated in value. Um, yeah.
So Lisa, I want to ask you, do you think that the dollar and Bitcoin can coexist? I actually think that I think that Bitcoin is going to take down the dollar. I have a, the way that I see it, I think there's like we were talking about before. There's no reason to accept dollars. Why would merchants want dollars? Why would they want um why would they want to accept pieces of paper for their energy, for their time, their labor? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I have a very thoughtful answer.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I'd want to probably go back and look historically at how currencies have dissolved.
Yeah,
And, we're fourth turning, like the 80-year time period. We've all heard that. Um, my daughter wrote something the other night, which I really thought was insightful, which was, 1944, there were, I think, 44 countries that met in Bretton Woods.
Bretton Woods. Yeah,
Um, Here we are 80 years later. You have 36 countries who meet to
for
discuss
BRICS.
a new currency or how to peg a currency, how to stabilize a currency, what
Yeah,
currency they're going to trade in, right? And that would be BRICS. So I think it's relatively obscene that, not obscene in a bad way, but how did we get so far behind the innovation curve on the money front?
yeah,
And I can really answer the question. We did because of I think it's largely driven by the criminals that are the bankers, the JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon. They don't want their system to fail, which I believe that it will. And you've had Elizabeth Warren and others who want to protect that existing infrastructure because those people protect her. But again, I'll go back to national security. I mean, I think Elizabeth Warren and Jamie Dimon are two of the biggest threats to our national security because they've been so anti Bitcoin,
yeah,
because they've propelled this narrative that energy use is somehow bad. I mean,
yeah,
no one ever says steel production uses too much energy, right? Like, I'm going to go live in this green building over here with this new kind of steel that took less energy to make. Said no one ever.
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm going to fly in this plane with technology that took less energy to make. I don't know about you, but I want like the best technology, regardless of the energy profile, with my safety. And Bitcoin is a safety mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a way to protect your wealth. If the thing doesn't use enough energy to protect itself, then it's easier to attack. It's
It's a
easier
way to
to
protect your it's a way to protect yourself, but
yeah,
it is a way to protect yourself, right? It gives you the ability to walk towards something that you want or away from something that you don't want. And that applies at the personal level, country level, right? We need a bedrock of energy in the US. And obviously, I'm hugely supportive of the strategic reserve of Bitcoin. I do not want them to trade Bitcoin, though. I find
yeah,
it, having been a commodity trader, I find it absolutely absurd that they trade our strategic petroleum reserve.
yeah,
And that's really what they're doing, because there's no other, I mean, we're not at war. There's no other reason for them to be making one change other than just stockpiling.
yeah, yeah. It's true, and it goes so much deeper, right? I mean, it's the when we have just multiple assets that people can accumulate. I think it just uh it monetizes things that shouldn't be monetized. It monetizes like let's say we have oil. Oil is people are selling futures contracts on their oil. They're not you. It's just everything has become monetized. Everything has become a form of money. Everything has become a way for people to save
Well,
because our current financial system doesn't use enough energy.
right, but I mean yeah, you're right. And oil, I mean, I forget what the statistic is, but like for every barrel made, it's traded 10 times or 100 times. Like
Wow.
it's maybe more than that, or maybe less. It's something like that. I mean, you're onto something, but I mean, we need liquid oil market. We need liquid commodity markets. I'm not anti market. I'm very
Of
much a
course.
free market advocate, because it allows people that are directly involved to manage risk, right? So if I'm a production company, I look into the market, and let's say that the futures curve for oil, and I have no idea where it is, but let's say if I look at a 10-year, the next 10 years, and they're typically quoted by month for the first few, and then maybe by quarter, I think, or 6-month time period. I haven't really looked in probably a decade, but let's just say that the 10-year curve is for $75 oil. And if the producer does their math and says, well, wow, all in, our costs are $50 or $40, let's hedge, right? They will forward sell production. That's smart. This is how markets
Yeah.
work. But it is not how the US government should be treating your strategic petroleum reserve, which was created basically to protect against oil shortages. I mean, we faced these things in the 70s, right? And there's no reason why they wouldn't happen again.
Yeah.
Right? We think that we have these really strong alliances, but it's like 1982 when France and Germany said, "Sorry, our energy security is more important than your political agenda." Like
Yeah.
that could really happen with Saudi Arabia and those nations that we have enjoyed um, mutually beneficial relationship with. Those things can change, and so
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think over time things do change. Things get they I think they change for the better. I think they change because uh people who have put in the time to actually understand whatever those changes could be, they're the ones who push for it. And I think Bitcoin is one of those changes. I think Bitcoin is one of those things that people are promoting because they think that it can improve the world. They think that it can improve like and on from your perspective, it can improve how efficient we are with our energy. it can improve just the financial system in general as a whole, right? It makes so many different changes. I have a question that I ask all of my guests. I like asking this question because it's it's more of a philosophical question. What do you think the most important downstream effect of Bitcoin is? So we talked about energy. We talked about how over time it'll make it so that more countries can access energy. Do you have any other perspectives? Let's say, for example, I mean, actually, if you want to dive deeper into that as well, we can do that. But the one that I think, how I see it is, just to give you a little time to think about it, is that how, like I said, I think housing prices are going to come down. I think people are going to give up their houses. They're going to give up their investment properties in order to accumulate Bitcoin instead. What are your thoughts on that? Of course, that has a lot of downstream effects where people can now build families, they can afford homes. Any thoughts on that?
I think
Just
the
your own.
biggest,
Your own.
yeah, no, I give this a lot of thought. I think the biggest downstream effect is hope,
Yes.
and then to take that one step further, it's agency, right? When you have hope, I think people are more likely to have agency, right? I can see a brighter future. I'm going to go work for it rather
Yeah.
than I'm never going to buy a house. I'm never going to have enough money to retire. I'm never going to be able to afford healthcare when I'm 80. I mean, the direct impact of inflation has been unnecessary stress and death among so many Americans. I should really do some research and get the numbers, but I think that Bitcoin is, certainly is not going to take all of our stress away.
No.
But when we have the ability to see things better in the future, like that's kind of all you need, right? That hope is the most important thing. What was that book? And it's a true story. Was it Unbroken? Was that the story where the guys were in the boat for, I don't know, for a long time, like 90 days or for a long time? It was during a war. They, um, oh my gosh, I wish I could, I'll look it up.
I don't
But
think I've read it. It
uh,
doesn't ring a bell.
anyway, okay, so these guys are out in the middle of the ocean. They're floating, like they have all these tragedies that happen, and it's like months. And a couple of them die, and they're debating whether or not they're going to eat the people
Wow.
that die. And they're all right. There's like obviously no fresh water, so every time it rains, they're trying to catch water and stay hydrated. And no, this is actually a true story. The guy's first name is Louis, I think. He went on to become, I think, an Olympic gold medalist, maybe a track person. Um, but he kept telling stories of what his mom used to make for dinner, memories of his family. And he would tell stories constantly and like take people out of where I am right now. And, this we're never going to make it sort of mentality. And he would be really vividly describing, I can taste the red sauce. I can hear her taking the implement or whatever, the spoon in the bowl to mix the this, right? Like that's all a form of hope.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely what Bitcoin gives us all. It's certainly, just personally, it's what it has given me. I have really had a lot of conversations in my head about how expensive it is to live, and how do we all not wind up homeless eventually with rising costs? What if we have a healthcare disaster? But once you own Bitcoin and really understand that it just solves it solves someone else having agency over the value of your energy. So I choose to store my energy in Bitcoin. And so I really don't care what the Federal Reserve does with the dollar. I mean, it does impact me. Obviously, it makes my, eggs go from $3 a dozen to 9. But so it obviously does have impact.
Yeah. But over time, if you have Bitcoin, you know for a fact that your cost of living is actually going down in real terms, which because you can then exchange that Bitcoin for more dollars. You can get more dollars in exchange, and you can use those dollars to spend on whatever you need.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I have just one last question for you, and then I want to just have you give an just a background of just where people can reach you. But why do you think a lot of people aren't touching Bitcoin, are scared of Bitcoin? I think a lot of people are scared of it. I think a lot of people don't want to understand it because it's so different. It's so I think it's almost scary to people to understand Bitcoin, to see where this is going. Why? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think people live in sound bites. They live on their phone. They have short attention spans. They live by mainstream or legacy media. I'm not calling it mainstream. I'm calling it legacy because I want to see it go away.
Yeah.
They live. They take what is said to them as gospel by figures who are actually not an authority, right? Like Jim Cramer. Why
Yeah.
people would ever take financial advice from that moron is beyond. Like, you can really look at his track record. I mean, I think that CNBC was probably started to provide a service, but it's really no different than like Entertainment Tonight at this point, or
Yeah.
Hollywood Squares, or like they just are trying to be witty and smart and think. I mean, I love Joe Kernan and how much he fights for Bitcoin, but then you've got Andrew Ross Sorkin who sits there and argues with him.
Yeah.
And it's so then you're making your viewer choose who are they going to believe.
Yeah.
You've got Jamie Dimon who comes on TV and says, I don't even want to talk about this again. Satoshi's head's going to pop out. Like, what a fraudster.
Yeah.
What a complete criminal.
Yeah.
Think of the wealth. I mean, he has robbed people of, if he went on CNBC 5 years ago and said, everybody should go buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, or you should take 0.1% of your net worth and go buy Bitcoin, or you should give up coffee for a year and just buy Bitcoin. America would be a different place. But
Yeah.
he didn't. He told people it was a pet rock and that he was dismissive. And I mean, so many people, when I talk to them about Bitcoin, they surface Jamie Dimon. Jeffrey Epstein's banker.
Yeah.
Like, come on. We've got to stop. We need agency over ourselves. And we need to spend a lot more time thinking, right? Thinking and, like, to your point, reading books instead of reading Facebook or, anyway, rant over. I'm sorry.
Instagram, Twitter, all that, all the brain rot. Let go of it. Yeah. I think like you said, the short time horizon, the short time, what's it called? The short attention spans, they definitely contribute to this. I think a lot of people, they hear the sound bites and they think, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to look at Bitcoin because, oh, this person who knows what they're doing in banking told me that Bitcoin is a pet rock, so I'm not going to buy it. And they haven't felt the pain. They haven't felt the the they haven't felt all of the problems that have come from the US dollar just being devalued and debased.
But repeat what you just said. You said all these people that are, did you say experts in banking?
Yeah, they think they're experts in banking. Yeah.
Right. I mean, all they are is financial criminals,
Yeah.
right? Like, yes, what they do is legal, but fractional reserve banking is, I mean, I think largest criminal organization in the world.
Yeah. It's just because they can take advantage of people who don't know any better. Right?
And they do. And it's legal. And we
Yeah.
have all the support that anyone needs by way of the legacy media.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just, I think the rabbit hole, I think we went through a couple different topics here, but the rabbit hole just keeps going deeper and deeper. You can't find a bottom, right? All these people who are telling you not to buy Bitcoin. I mean, I'm sure if you look at their history, you're going to see that they benefited from people not understanding how money works, from from people giving them the, like you said, the authority to take care of their lives, to take care of their finances. You're saying how Bitcoin gives you agency. In the current financial system, it relies on custodians. It relies on not having agency over your life. It relies on not having responsibility over your own finances, over your own wealth. And that's what I think that's what all these, I guess, financial experts, the Jamie Morgans, sorry, Jamie Dimons of Wall Street rely on. Hey,
Okay,
I have a
but see, we need to quit calling them experts.
yeah, we do. You're right. You're right. They're not experts at all. They're just criminals who lasted longer than everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And okay. So we'll go into where people can find you, but I want to ask you any last tips for my audience here. My audience is generally they're in their 30s to 50s. They're learning about Bitcoin. They're trying to learn more. They're trying to figure out where this thing is going. Any advice for them? Just final tips.
I would say focus on the young people that are in your circle. No one else really matters, right?
Mm,
I am delighted when a 50 or 60-year-old, 70-year-old person picks up the scent of Bitcoin. Like, it truly gives me delight when people see it.
yeah.
But it's probably too late to change that entire generation. It's not at all
Yeah.
too late to redirect the young people. And
Yeah.
they immediately latch on to why this makes sense. Right. And they immediately dig into like the deep philosophical topics around Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's right. You don't have to go through the whole, well, what is money, or what it like, I'm really not trying to discount any of that, but it's for them, it's hope, it's agency, it's the power of having more information than other generations have been exposed to, right? My daughter's generation has the ability to live in a completely different reality than I did, because Bitcoin is like this solve for truth function. It
Yeah.
causes you to think differently about everything.
It
So
does.
I would say, if you're a parent, keep your kid out of school as frequently as possible. Encourage them to uh, question what they learn in school. Stand up to the administrators at your children's school if you believe something is wrong against your values. I mean, let your voice be heard. Uh, I mean, I did all of those things, and people kept telling me that my daughter was going to be, no, she's not going to have any friends. She's probably going to be awkward. Um, like, none of that's true. She
Yeah.
knows how to think for herself. And I feel very confident that we could drop her literally anywhere on earth and she could figure it out,
Wow.
right? She could adapt and figure it out no matter what her situation was.
Yeah. That's the power
It's
of being able to think for yourself. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Wow. That's see, I feel like that's so important. I think most people really don't. They don't think for themselves. They think about what I guess again the experts tell them to do, right?
Right. Well, I'm not sure it's that they don't think for themselves, because I give people a lot of credit. I think that most people are inherently great
Yeah.
and they have good intentions. No one wakes up and says, I want to be a jerk today.
Yeah.
I think we all wake up and um, we have good intentions for the way that we interact with others. But you, it's just about trusting yourself.
Yeah.
It's about, I understand that, I got a job in energy trading. I never wanted to go back to school. I didn't particularly love school. I have a science degree. My parents did pay for my college. They told me if I didn't do math or science, they wouldn't pay for it. And so I was like, okay, I'll do science. And that enabled me to get out and get a good job. But it really, they really, and I think parents of kind of my generation really encouraged us to follow a path to success. If you do this, you will have success.
Yeah.
I think Bitcoin wipes the slate clean.
Yeah.
Time to start walking and clear your own path.
Yeah.
Who wants to be an investment banker anymore? Like, that job sucks.
Yeah.
It does.
You're working 15, 16 hours a day.
You're working like 18 or 20 hours a day, or at least
Wow.
you used to before they all became weak. I mean, now the junior banker, I'm not kidding you, the junior bankers like banded together. This was like in the Wall Street Journal. They banded together and demanded, like fair working conditions, like they worked in factories or something. And it's like,
Wow.
you just graduated from college and you make $365,000 a year and you only want to work 8 or 10 hours a day. Like, what did you think earns you the salary that
That you're
is
getting, yeah.
prescribed within this job? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, you're completely right. I think things have definitely changed over the last little bit. People, I don't think it's that young people don't want to work. I think it's that they're figuring out that they can make money by doing things other than going to work.
well, I think hopefully they're thinking, what am I
Yeah,
even working for? Like,
exactly.
oh my God, I'm going to go get a job at JP Morgan. Great. We bank Epstein.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, who wants to be associated with that? You get one shot at
Nobody.
life. Like, go
Yeah,
freaking do something good.
yeah. That's it. That's it. I think that's the key. I think that's so important. Once you really figure out what you want to do, I think you're gonna have a much happier life as well. You're gonna be able to live a life that you actually enjoy. You're going to be able to live a life that you look forward to. I think that's what Bitcoin gave me personally.
Okay, that's actually a completely proven fact. Everything that you
Yeah,
just said. I mean,
yeah.
people should like Google the Harvard study on happiness. It's the longest study on happiness, and all of the things that impacted people's happiness over their lifetime. And it's what's super interesting is the study about twins. And, okay, same
Ah,
basically genetic stuff, but different paths through life and how they wind up happy or, both happy or both unhappy or one happy and one not. Um, Community and purpose are the whole thing. And
that's it.
that's, to me, the greatest gift of Bitcoin is that I love these crazy people who talk about Bitcoin on Twitter. Like, they're awesome. They're
Yeah,
interesting and they're independent thinkers.
yeah. And I think there's some of the greatest thinkers out there. I mean, out of all the people that I've spoken to, I think Bitcoiners, they generally have they know something, they understand something at a very deep level, and they've used that to understand Bitcoin at a deeper level. Like yourself, for example, you understand energy, and you use that to help yourself understand how Bitcoin works. And again, why Bitcoin doesn't use too much energy. You've put in the time, you've put in the research, and it shows, right? It's proof of work. Proof of work. The fact that you're putting in all this time and you actually understand it. And I think the result that Bitcoin is giving us, it shows us like the fact that Bitcoin is. I actually just opened up the chart here. Bitcoin's at 77,000,
Oh my gosh.
right? And that's what
I'm sort of being
that's
sarcastic because I'm like not going to be impressed until we probably hit
like 80,
250. No, like 250.
250. Wow. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Regardless.
Haven't started yet. Like, no,
Yeah.
to your point, no one knows about Bitcoin yet.
No. People think we're crazy, right? They think that we're ridiculous. They think that we have no clue what we're talking about. They think we're honestly they think we're crackpots. This imaginary thing.
I went to an event in Houston last night. It was actually beautiful. It was outside on the Buffalo Bayou. Um, and there's been all this kind of regenerative work and lots of trees, and they've really created a great outdoor space. which again is like really important for people to, have those places and have the connection to the earth.
Yeah.
But I saw someone I hadn't seen in about 10 years, and her first words out of her mouth were, "Are you doing that Bitcoin thing?"
Wow.
It's like, wow. It
The
wasn't like,
masses are coming.
it wasn't like, "Oh, are you still doing Bitcoin?" It was like I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And then
The
she
ma
had no follow on. I said, "Yeah." She had no follow on. She just walked off.
Wow. Yeah, see, I think the masses are gonna come after. Like now, they're on the they fight you stage, or they're on they hate on you stage, and eventually it's gonna be like, wow, why didn't you tell me about this earlier? I actually had somebody who said that to me. So I was telling him to buy Bitcoin at 15, 16K in 2022, and he messaged me. He said, "Why didn't you try to convince me even more? Why didn't you push me harder?"
Dude, it's called agency and you need to find some.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Hey Lisa, I really enjoyed that talk. I learned a lot. I uh
Me too.
I learned
Thank you.
about energy. I learned about where energy is going. This was great. I actually want to go through it again just to see which clips of that I didn't quite understand and just go through them a little bit deeper. Maybe we can do this again. But I wanted to ask you, just for my audience, where can they find you?
I think I'm probably easy to locate on social media. I'm on Twitter and I'm also on LinkedIn pretty heavily because I
Perfect.
really believe in trying to infect that crowd of people. There are not a lot of Bitcoiners over there. So if you're a
Yeah.
Bitcoiner, get on LinkedIn and just start putting out some content over there so that we can spread the message a little bit. Hopefully, maybe a little bit faster. Probably not, but um, yeah, I'm easy to find. I have a website. It's lisahuff.io. Um, I, I'm going to fix the link. The link is currently, I've left the link not working for a while. I have a link to my calendar and I love meeting with people, but it was a little crazy. And so I switched calendar providers and then I didn't fix the link because my calendar was too crazy. But I'm going to fix the link today and book 15 minutes. Let's chat. I want to hear what you're working on. And it's really the greatest privilege for me is when I talk to people that are starting down the Bitcoin path, or perhaps they're a founder of a Bitcoin company or thinking about making a career change.
Yeah.
It's truly a privilege to hear people's stories. So thank you.
That's it. Completely agree. Thank you so much for your time, Lisa. I really appreciate it. Maybe we can do this again. I thought this was awesome. Maybe we can go into another rabbit hole. I think there are so many things that you can't really cover in an hour and 7 minutes now. I guess this is going to go a little longer, but there's so many things you can't cover in an hour. I hope we can do this again.
Me too. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time, Lisa. I really appreciate it.